I just got back from like the most incredible experience of my drift life. Drift Week. So in this video, I'm going to answer some of the pretty common questions I've gotten about Drift Week, a lot of common questions that people ask. Things like, how much did it cost? Was it worth it? Was it everything I hoped and dreamed of? How did I get my wife on board? Also, like, what would I do differently? But I figure I should also explain how this trip works, because I think some people think it's only a week long. So hang tight and we'll get into all of these questions and more. Drift Week is a 2-week long expedition. It's not just 1 week. It's like 1 week of drifting and then 1 week of traveling. So it's not just 7 days. I was gone from my house for 2 weeks straight, 14 days. Actually, I think it was 15 days, counting travel to and from. It was 15 days. Drift Week is this trip that's put on by Lone Star Drift. So Aaron Losey put this together. I've seen several ideas of this over the years. I got a shout out to my buddy Nick Stuckey. He now runs Opposite Lock Drift School in Utah. I remember him posting about this. He planned out a road trip in California to hit all of these drift tracks in a row. And his whole idea was like, oh, let's do it like Drag Week, where you street drive your drift car from track to track to track and go drifting with all your buddies for a long time. And that's what Drift Week is. So the way it works is you show up to the first track. The hardcore guys, they street drive their drift car to the first track. However, it is acceptable to trailer your car to the first track, bring all your supplies and everything with you, and then figure everything out from there. So that's what I did. I trailered my car to the first track, which was Englishtown in New Jersey, and then from there I was able to divvy everything up. Lone Star was super awesome and got Valino on board for this trip, so people didn't have to worry about trying to find tires and transport tires. So Valino came with a box truck, Tire Stacks brought a motorhome and a tire changing trailer, and they took care of all the tire. Valino and Tire Stacks worked together and took care of all the tire changing stuff, so don't have to worry about that. And then Rudy Hansen, huge shout out to Rudy and his wife Shelly, they brought their truck and trailer, and they filled their trailer full of everybody's junk. I got 8 wheels and tires, and a box of spare parts that I was able to put in their trailer, and everybody got to do that. And then Lone Star brings their own trailer with another tire machine and some other stuff, you know, and other spares and merch and all that stuff to go along with it. I've got my little cheat sheet here. This is kind of like off the cuff stuff. I'm just kind of running through the questions and the answers that I have based on what people asked, but this isn't like a whole script. I've got a pen here so I can mark down what I've answered so far, or what questions I've gone through. Here's the list of all the questions I'm going to answer here. How much did it cost? Was it worth it? Was it everything I hoped and dreamed it would be? What would I do differently next time? How many people were on Drift Week? How many drivers and cars? How did I get my wife on board with letting me do this trip? And yeah, that's it. All right, so the first question that everybody asks, I just want to get out of the way right at the beginning, how much did it cost? I talked to a couple of buddies of mine who had done Drift Week to kind of get an idea of general budget, and they pretty much said, you should set aside 10 grand to do this trip. And how accurate were they? Very accurate. So I spent a grand total, I've got my cheat sheet here, I spent a grand total of $9,869 on this trip. The entry fee for me is $2,500. The entry fee kind of varies a little bit depending on I think, Aaron may correct me on this if I'm wrong, but it kind of depends on what you bring to the table. If you're like an OG guy, if you sign up early, whatever. If you do several trips, I think you might get a little bit cheaper, but $2,500. $2,500 really is not that bad for 7 track days, and really it was 7.5, 8. So really that's not a bad price when you factor in how much seat time you get and some of the incredible tracks we went to. Lodging, I spent a little bit too much on this. So that's hotels, Airbnb, stuff like that. I spent $1,571, give or take a little bit there. I spent a lot more than I needed to. The thing that I didn't do a very good job of was getting into an Airbnb group. The first place I stayed, I had an Airbnb. It was great. It was with the Polish guys, you know, Night Ride and Gobla and those guys. It was awesome. You know, tons of people in this little house in New Jersey. It was fantastic. It worked out really well. But then after that, like, I didn't plan very well, so I was scrambling, and I ended up staying in hotels a lot of the time. I really wanted to do things like, this was a vacation, right? So I wanted to stay in nice hotels. I don't want to stay in like little motels and stuff like that. So I tried to stay in a little bit nicer hotels, spent definitely more money than what I needed to. You know, I was staying in some like the Fairfield Inn by Marriott, and like I think I stayed in the Hampton Inn at one point by Hilton. So I spent a lot more on that because those hotels were like 150 to 180 bucks a night, whereas an Airbnb was 50 bucks a night. Okay, tires. This was kind of a debatable thing. I spent $3,681 in tires. I spent more money in tires than I needed to because I've got a big stack of Valinos over there and I've got a bunch in my trailer. So I took a bunch of tires home with me. And I'll get to that a little bit why I didn't use that many tires. Total in fuel, I spent $414 on fuel for the 8.6 and $715 on diesel fuel. I spent more money in fuel driving to and from the first place than I did in my 8.6 around and around all the different tracks and at the tracks. Food, I like eating good meals, so I kind of budgeted originally for about 50, 60 bucks a day, but I ended up spending just shy of $500 for the entire trip on food, so that was $488. I could have definitely saved money there, but that's really not too bad. I think that's like $35 a day, so that's really not, I didn't do too terrible there. Miscellaneous, so there's a bunch of other miscellaneous stuff, so like the things I had to go buy, like the stuff to refiberglass my front bumper back together, zip ties, other miscellaneous stuff like the little heater I bought after freezing I bought off at Pocono, a couple of things like that I purchased along the way, so that's kind of the miscellaneous category. It was $300. And the one thing that really killed me in the Northeast was tolls. I spent about 200 bucks on tolls, which was absolutely insane. And that brings the total just shy of $10,000. So was this trip worth it? Was it worth the money, the $10,000 to go on this drift, these 2 weeks of drifting? Yes, 100% totally worth it. I wanted to meet a lot of these famous people, these people I've been following on the internet for a long time, and I wanted the opportunity to drive with them. This seemed like the right opportunity for it. There's a whole application process, there's a bunch of stuff that goes into it, but I think it was well worth the investment. The quality of seat time was phenomenal. I've been drifting for over a decade at this point, and I've never been to an event where we didn't really need staff. Like, okay, there needs to be staff for like spotters on track. So if you're like pulling on track, somebody say, wait, hang on. Okay, now you're good to go. But for the most part, the track really ran itself. The drivers were aware of others because everybody's experienced. It's a whole application process. So you have to be a good enough driver to be on Drift Week, which means you have to have the experience to know how to handle yourself on a hot track. So it worked really well. And we hot lapped at places that had never hot lapped before. Like at Summit Point on Shenandoah, they had never done hot lapping before, and we were able to do that. It was so awesome. And there's something to be said, like at a normal drift event, I used to try and get as many laps in as I could. And that was going for the quantity of seat time. I'm at a point now that as a driver, I'm looking for the quality of seat time. And the quality of seat time at Drift Week was better than anything else I've ever experienced. I also appreciate that they spaced things out a little bit. So, like I said earlier, it was 2 whole weeks, 7.5 days of actually drifting, and then travel days in between. That's the way to do it. So we did 2.5 days in Englishtown, and then we had some downtime. Then we went to Pocono, and then we had some downtime. And then we went to Summit Point, and then we had some downtime. And then we went to Thompson. So there's a little bit of downtime in between each, which is the way you really need to do it. I've seen a couple other people or a couple other groups try and do like a Drift Week-ish thing, and it doesn't work well. At least what I've seen is like they're doing back-to-back track days for an entire week. And I'm like, that really doesn't work because people's cars break. You need time to be able to fix your car. You also need time, like at the end of the day, you stop drifting at 5, 6, whatever, when the track goes cold. You go back to your Airbnb, you sleep, you pack everything up, and then you leave. Or you go back, you work on your car a little bit, then you pack up and you leave in the morning. It was really nice being able to leave my luggage, like with my clothes and stuff, at the Airbnb and not take it with me to the track, although I did do that one day. It just made things really easy to be able to travel and not feel like super rushed. There was enough time to fix your car and then keep going. I really thought that was a good way to do it instead of doing like literally day after day after day. The unfortunate thing is the first day I showed up late, I only got like an hour or two of track time on the first day at Englishtown. The next day is Adam LZ Drift Day, and I crashed. And so the next day I spent the entire day fixing the car. And then at Pocono, I really didn't want to drive in this freezing snow because I just was so cold. I was over it. So I didn't drive a whole lot that day. But as things got warmer, I drove more. So, but really, I didn't get the full experience, I think, because of that. Or I didn't get I didn't go through as many tires because of that downtime that I had, at the track, I decided not to drive for these reasons I listed. So I ended up with a lot more extra tires at the end. I purchased 24 Valinos and 10 other tires to burn at Englishtown. I didn't use 10 other ones. I also had, I think, 8 Kendas, and I burned through those at Englishtown and at Pocono, and then after that I was on the Valinos at Summit Point. Well, I had one pair left of Kendas at Summit Point, and then it was Valinos the rest of the trip. I bought more tires than I needed because of that. Continue on this, was it worth it? One of the cool things about Drift Week is that even as like a grassroots guy like me, right, I'd like to think I'm famous. I'm not famous. I guess I'm famous in some, Corolla nerd circles because I'm a huge Corolla nerd, 8.6 nerd, whatever. But as a guy like me who really is kind of a nobody, I got to drive with some really famous people. I got to network with some really good people. And because of that, I was able to get a few sponsors and partners on board for the trip. So like for example, Amsoil saved my butt, right? I ripped open an oil pan and I still had oil to keep the engine safe, okay? So I saved some money. I didn't have to buy a bunch of oil for the trip. Amsoil hooked me up and they sent me a care package. It was super awesome. I would have bought it anyway because I always buy Amsoil, but it was super cool that they came on board. Excess Power, right? I got a battery. I need a new battery for my car. Excess Power sent me a battery. Super awesome. I love their batteries. That's what I was going to buy anyway. Radium Engineering, for sure, that saved me a bunch of money. I was running a pretty cheap, crappy fuel cell. I talked to Radium, got everything squared away. They were able to hook me up and help me get a fuel cell for my car, a proper one, right? Once again, it's what I was going to buy, but because of Drift Week, I was able to work out this great deal with them and work together on this whole experience. It was fantastic. And of course, I can't leave out Just Engineering. Super awesome angle kit. Best thing they make, or best angle kit for an 8.6, and they make tons of great angle kits for all kinds of other cars. I would not have been able to drive as well at Drift Week and follow some of these people if I didn't have this incredible angle kit. Nothing else even comes close to how good this is. And of course, I can't forget MB Drift. I drive with MB Drift at Rockingham Speedway. The last couple years, I've got so much seat time with them at the Myrtle Beach Speedway and at Rockingham Speedway that they're really what helped me grow as a driver. If it weren't for them, I don't think that I would be the driver that I am today. So I got a shout out to them. Super awesome group of guys that run drift events here in the Carolinas. Okay, was it everything I hoped and dreamed of? I already answered, was it worth it? Yes, hands down. I will do it again so as soon as I can recover financially from it and put some money aside for the next one. But was it everything I hoped and dreamed of? I'm gonna say no, okay? And let me explain why. Okay, I don't know why, but I had this impression that going into Drift Week that I was gonna get invited to tandem with like Adam LZ and all these famous people, right? I thought that was gonna be the whole thing. Oh, hey Devin, you got an 8.6, come drive with us, right? I don't know why I had this impression that's what was going to happen, but I did. And I also get like social anxiety, so I didn't want to bother all these famous people being there like, oh hey, can I come drive with you? Hey, can I talk? Hey, can I talk? I didn't want to be that guy. What I failed to do was take the opportunity to introduce myself to all these people and make a bunch of friends. I did make tons of friends, right? Love that. But for whatever reason, I just had this false impression that like the famous people were gonna wanna come around and talk to everybody else on the trip. And I don't know why I had that impression. I guess that was probably one major takeaway from this is that I really needed to put myself out there and I didn't. And that's on me, 100%. I gotta say I'm very grateful for Luke Fink and his wife, T. They came around, they talked to everybody. I thought that was really neat because I look up to Luke Fink a lot and I love his content, I love his driving, and he's just a super cool dude. And what I loved about them is that although they're famous people, right, they went around and talked to everybody. And I loved that because I got to get to know them. And also one of their friends, Travis, man, that guy had so many heartaches on the trip with his Corvette. He ended up having an engine failure before Hyperfest, because Hyperfest was after Drift Week, and he had wiring issues and he had all these different problems with his car, and he didn't stop. He kept going and going, fixing the car, and it was awesome. So Travis, Luke, T, I love you guys. Thank you so much. I'm so glad that I got to know you guys. I also made tons of other friends, but they were really the only like famous people that introduced themselves, and I was just too shy to go talk to like anybody else. I also didn't realize how many people were on Drift Week because the media only really covers, okay, so the big media outlets typically only cover the famous people and a couple little tidbits here and there of the other cars. And that's how you get views. You work with the famous people. I'm not complaining about that whatsoever. What I'm saying is that I didn't realize how many people were actually on Drift Week. I thought it was a super small group of like maybe like 15, 20 people that went on Drift Week. And so it was going to be like majority like famous people and then a couple of other like grassroots heroes or whatever like me that aren't really a big name anywhere. So I thought that it was going to be a different ratio of people, but I was totally wrong. And I think I was pleasantly surprised by that. Another important question that I got asked was, what would I do differently next time? Is an 8.6 the right choice for this? What other stuff would I do differently? Okay, first off, I love taking my 8.6, and I will take the 8.6 again for sure, but it was really noisy. So I'm gonna put a resonator in the exhaust, do a couple of things to quiet it down. Also, after seeing Colette Davis's Corvette catch fire at Hyperfest, like it really opened my eyes to how quickly things can burn down. And you know, Rudy and Shelly had their one of their cars burned down the first Drift Week, their Corvette, and that really bummed me out to see that. So seeing Colette's car burn, you know, catch fire like it did, really opened my eyes. I've got some things to sort out on the car. Yes, I want to make it more comfortable. Things like maybe some reclining bucket seats, sound deadening, resonator on the exhaust. But also, I do have I look at this and I'm like, wow, there are some things I need to do differently. Definitely have some things to, you know, some progress to make on that. Other things I would change, my car is supercharged and it's pretty fast for a grassroots car, right? 250 horsepower, the car weighs 2,200 pounds. So it's a good performing grassroots car, but you know, and I can keep up with most grassroots guys, even if they got tons of power. But on Drift Week, these are like top tier drivers, right? So I really struggled to keep up with them because of that. They were driving fast cars and they were driving very well, and I just couldn't quite keep up. So I think that for the next Drift Week, I might change things up. Still beams powered, but I might be pushing a little bit more horsepowers. So you should definitely subscribe to my channel and keep an eye on that because I will be doing something here in the near future. Other things, I would definitely make sure I have a passenger or somebody to sit shotgun. I had a buddy that was supposed to come with me and he had a family emergency and couldn't make it. So like we made it halfway there and stopped for the night, and then he had to go back because he had a family emergency he had to take care of. So I was gonna give him my camera and take video, and that's another thing that I wasn't really prepared for ahead of time. Is media is awesome. You really, like, if you're a content creator or whatever like I am, you really need to make sure that you got a media guy there, or that you've got money set aside to pay a media guy, if it's photography or videography or whatever, ahead of time. Sure, these guys are gonna capture as much as they can, but obviously they're gonna prioritize who gives them money. I think that's really all I would change about Drift Week. You know, maybe in the future I'll build another car. You know, there are some people who built cars specifically for Drift Week. I think I would just modify my car a little differently to make it better for Drift Week. Like I said, it's like reclining seats, being able to like adjustable back so I can fold the back forward to shove stuff behind the seats and behind the roll cage. Because that was a pain. Like I was lifting stuff and shoving it between the seats to get past through the roll cage, and it was a huge pain. How many people were on Drift Week? I mentioned this earlier that there was a lot more people than I expected, and to be honest, I don't have a full count of how many people. There were over 10 Corvettes alone, okay? There was my 8.6, there was Devin Bruce's BMW, there's another BMW, there was a Mustang, Dustin Hash's Corvette truck thing, Cressida, RX-7. I mean, I would say there had to have been more than 20 cars. Probably, I wish that I knew the exact number, but probably somewhere like 30-ish. Each of those people also had a co-driver, so lots of people like that to like get to know everybody. So there's 50 plus people on Drift Week total. Maybe not that many cars, but there was at least 50 people that were a part of this whole adventure. And I made some incredible friends. Like, if anybody that I hung out with on Drift Week like hit me up and they're like, hey, look, Devin will be in Myrtle Beach, I need a place to stay. Hey, no problem, man. I got a guest bedroom. You can crash here. You know, you need something to work on your car. No problem. I got a garage. Let's do it. Like, I felt bad. Luke and his wife and kids were here in Myrtle Beach after Hyperfest, and they're headed down to FD Orlando. And I would have let them stay at our house, but we were all sick here at my house, so we couldn't entertain them at our house, unfortunately. Otherwise, they totally could have stayed with us. Yeah, seriously. Like, that's one of the coolest things about Drift Week is you make friends with all these incredible people and people from all over the place, and we're all just drifters, right? So. But I was, you know, I made some really good friends. And I guess to, you know, circle back a little bit here, what would I change about Drift Week? I would definitely do Airbnbs more. That's when I got to know people, and I was a little hesitant to do Airbnbs. Like, I'm not a party guy. Like, at the end of the day, I just want to crash and be out, be done. And I just want a place that I can decompress, relax. I don't like loud parties and all that stuff. but I thought that maybe a bunch of people on Drift Week would be like that. I didn't really think about that at the end of the day, we've just driven the entire day on the track and been out in the sun and the heat and the cold or whatever, that they would also be exhausted and wouldn't want to come back and party. So I don't know why I didn't think about that, but Airbnbs, that's the way to go. You know, just find a group of people. And I also think it's good to like rotate Airbnb groups so you get to know more people. How did I get my wife on board? My wife actually loves drifting. When we first met, like the first date that I took her on was I had a Turbo MR2, snow tires. We live in Utah, and we went like snow drifting on our way to or from this concert thing at the college. And that was like our first date, right? And then when I first really got heavy into drifting after we got married was in Michigan, and I convinced her to come to the track because there was an outlet mall across the street. And I said, well, come on out to the track. And she's like, well, I don't know, like it's kind of your thing. And I said, well, there's a mall across the street. You can go shopping and come to the track. And she went for like 2 ride-alongs, and then she didn't want to get out of the car. She just wanted to keep riding with me because she loved drifting so much. So if we're up to her, she would have come with me on Drift Week. And I would have loved to have her as my co-driver, as my, sitting shotgun with me. But we also do have a kid. And our kid is a little too young to take on trips like this, unfortunately. So she stayed home with our son while I went on this big, incredible adventure. And I love her for that. And I'm super grateful that I have a really supportive spouse to let me do things like this. It's not really necessarily a let me do things like this. It's not like I'm like, oh, I can't do it because the wife said no. But that we were able to work together to figure out how we could afford and justify doing this trip. Is that everything? I think it's everything. Yeah, so I will definitely be doing Drift Week again. As long as Aaron Lowe's, you'll have me back, I will be back as many times as I can afford. Such an incredible experience. The quality seat time is fantastic. Like nothing else. It really opened up my eyes to what drifting could be and should be, as well as like getting to network some people who have, like, to me, they've made it, right? They're making a living off of YouTube, making a living off of creating content, and doing what they love. That's what I would love to be doing full time. I have a day job. That's what pays the bills. I do stuff like this for fun, and I would love to be able to play, do fun things like this for a living, or have it fuel my career and how I make a how I make a living. So that's kind of one of the biggest things I got out of this, was learning how people do it, or hopefully learning how people do it, and seeing that it's something that's attainable to me as long as I keep putting my mind at it. Drift Week, 100%. I'll be back as many times as I can. I want to have more shirts like this. This is Drift Week 5. I'm not going to make it Drift Week 6. I just can't afford it, unfortunately. But hopefully I'll have a t-shirt from Drift Week 7 next year. Maybe? That'd be sweet. If you got more questions about Drift Week, put it in the comments. I'll answer them, or maybe I'll do another video and talk more about other things about Drift Week. Like, comment, subscribe, share, all of that stuff. Thanks, guys. See you next time, I guess.